Stay up to date on the latest political news this election season for less. Visit inforum.news/port and get 3 months of unlimited access to our news network for only 99 cents a month. Subscribe now at inforum.news/port. This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes and powering our vehicles to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Forum Communications Company is proud to be a part of the Trust Project. Learn more at thetrustproject.org. Welcome to Plain Talk. And hey, late last week we got some news that I think it's fair to say raised a lot of eyebrows. There has been headlines about a building project, a contract that went over its budgeted scope. There's some questions about when people knew about it, when the legislature knew about it. Anyway, that's a whole thing. But in the context of that, as some reporters, including our own Jeremy Turley from Forum Communications, who's done a lot of excellent journalism on this, as they were requesting information about this story, they got a response from the Attorney General's office indicating that a number of emails to the people relevant, including former Attorney General Wayne Stenehjem, former Deputy Attorney General Troy Seibel, that those emails didn't exist anymore, that they'd been deleted by an employee in the Attorney General's office who, I guess suffice it to say, there's a lot of questions about that. So here to hopefully answer some of them and bring some illumination to this issue is our current Attorney General, Drew Wrigley. And Drew, I mean, did I get that right? Am I describing what's going on here?
Yeah, you've got it right. I just want to point out for your listeners that we're talking about a building project that was completed last year at roughly this time. They moved into a new build. 5 of our divisions moved into a new building well south of the Capitol, and that happened in the summer of 2021. They discovered my predecessor and the previous deputy were informed of the cost overrun, and this is all documented, by the way, internally with the paper trail, as you will. They were notified of the overrun in January of 2021, just as the legislative session was beginning, and then in turn, the deputy notified people internally here in the office, the budget people, let them know about this cost overrun 6 months later. In June, just as we were getting to the end of that biennium, and they had to, figure out if they had the money to figure it out somehow without getting extra appropriations or anything. Somehow they scratched together $1.4 million, which they did owe it. They had made requests about the new building they were moving into, and they had some change orders. I mean, all of that is very well documented by the contractors. I mean, they were just doing as they were asked to do, and so the legislature didn't know about this. Until we obviously, when I learned of it the day after the previous deputy left. I took office in February of this year on the 9th. The previous deputy at the time, he left about 5 weeks later. And because I let him know that we had it was a cordial discussion. I just let him know that I was going to bring in my own person eventually, which is customary with a change like this. That's not out of the ordinary. But the next day, the budget people came to me and said, you need to inform me about something. And they let me know what had happened in the previous year, because they felt rightly that, this was a matter that I needed to be aware of, but also see how I wanted to address it. And what I said right away was, put everything together we have, every scrap of paper you can find, every email, everything you can find. And then we're going to call the auditor tomorrow. And we're going to sit down with them and let them know what's happened and about this overrun, et cetera. And it just went from there. We did that. And then the first opportunity we had, I said the first chance where both the minority leaders and the minority leaders and the majority leaders from both houses in the legislature, when they're in town next, I want us to meet with them and we'll inform them. And we did that here now, whatever it was, 3-4 weeks ago. I don't remember the date. We sat here in this office, laid out everything we have for them, apprised them of it. They asked if I would be willing to go to the budget section the very next day and inform more broadly. And I said, of course. We'll talk about everything we've got here. Now, in the wake of that, there were open record requests for, any emails or anything else that would bear on that situation, which we were glad to provide. I mean, it doesn't bring me joy to talk about that, but it's something that the legislature deserves to know that. It's a very significant financial matter, and they utilize resources that weren't allocated for that purpose. There's no illegality. I want to make clear. That's been vetted very thoroughly. It's not illegal, but the normal course is you have to inform the legislature of that. So, just to keep that faith. And that's what we've done, and let them know. So when we were providing, we had a stack this high of emails and everything else around here pertaining to that situation, which we are glad to turn over. It became known to us during that search, because one of the things he had to provide was emails from Wayne Stenehjem, emails from Troy Seibel. And we were informed they don't exist. Those accounts were deleted. At first, I almost chuckled. I said, don't worry. I said, we'll get them back. Obviously you can regenerate those, right? I said, just talk to the IT people and just regenerate the accounts. And then we'll see if there's anything in there that would, meet this open records request that we have. And they looked at me and said, that's the problem. We're talking to the IT people. They're telling us it's gone. They're just gone. So that one thing leads on to another. And what we discovered, and what the documentation inside the office shows, and talking with all the people that were involved, was that the Monday following Wayne's death, I think it was on that Monday, just 48 hours later, just very quickly thereafter, our IT department was directed to delete Wayne's entire account.
Not deactivate the account.
Not deactivate, delete it. And we're putting together right now, Rob, this is the first time this is being discussed, but we are putting together right now a small packet of, very small, just a couple of emails that pertain to it, because of some open record requests. One email in particular that will highlight, it is the email directing that get done. And we do have that email. And we're going to be putting that out this morning when we make sure we've got everything together that we want to, because we don't want to do this piecemeal. We really want the stuff to go out. So responding to the open record request, it will be known here in a while what that email was, what came from, and what was the directive. So it references in there, though, that this is coming with the approval of the then deputy, Troy Seibel. It says that in the email. Fast forward, so that took place. I obviously didn't have any, I wasn't even here. I hadn't been appointed or anything. No one had. There wasn't an attorney general. Some months, well, then Troy, we parted ways in March. And a couple months later, here in May, I'm going to not get the date exactly right off the top of my head, but it's later in May. I learned when we couldn't comply with the open records request, I was told that Troy's email was deleted at the direction of the same staff member. And I want to stress this to people because it matters. This person was not authorized to give that directive. It was not an attorney who did this, so no one needs to wonder if an attorney was giving this advice in the office. It was not an attorney, and it was not anyone with any supervisory responsibilities in the office. So that apparently went out. I then, obviously, I asked to meet with that person immediately. I asked what possible authority they could have been acting under, or could have thought they were acting under, and that they wouldn't bring this to my attention. There was no authority to be cited at that point. So there we are. Now, I did go through with that person quite extensively, the circumstances and what they did. And they went through a culling, and they said they went through to look through the emails, see what was there. They had, made an assessment in their own, perspective. That wouldn't have satisfied what we would have done had it been done differently, but I'm just relaying that to you. That was done over the course, I guess, of a couple of weeks to see if there were loose ends or things that people needed to work on. I don't know, but I mean, that came a couple of months after Troy actually left, but that's what was going on in that time frame.
Is there any indication, because we have the email that you're, and first, who is this person? I mean, obviously you know who this person is.
I do, and we'll be releasing that email this morning. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not trying to be coy about it, but I'm just going to let the email speak for itself.
Okay.
I'll continue. I know that you're gonna maybe even your previous. I think because you made your open record request and got all those same records at the same time, we will provide the same to you.
Okay.
At the same time.
What the email previously, the first email to delete former Attorney General Wayne Stenehjem's account.
Right.
And all his emails. First of all, how many emails are we talking about? Like, how far back were they maintained? Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, he was in office for more than 2 decades. Was it 2 decades of emails? I mean, what was it?
I don't know. They tell me there's no way to ascertain the number, but the email that you'll get this morning, that the directive, it mentions the fact that according to this person, Wayne kept everything.
Okay.
That's what I know.
That's got to be tens of thousands. I mean, that's.
I don't know. I don't know that answer. I mean, I've only been here now 5 months, and I've got probably 1,000 email in there. I'm not that much of an email person, but I do note this also. I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say north of 95% of the emails that I get are to multiple people. I mean, so any email that was sent inside this office pertaining to the $1.8 million overrun, any email that Wayne would have sent to someone or that Troy would have sent to someone in the office, we still have those. Those don't go away when you delete that account.
If somebody was CC'd on it or
yeah.
whatever.
So I mean, that's when you see all the emails that you got back as a result of your opens records request. That's what that is. It's from everyone else's email that stuff sent to. So to some degree, there's an enormous number of the emails, a vast majority of them that were sent internally about those matters would be contained in that still.
Obviously, and not that you're trying to, but obviously the concern remains. I mean, there's going to be some missing record, right? I mean, there's going to be some part of it. Have you spoken at all? Let me get back to my original question. Troy, I think he hasn't said this to me, but reportedly has denied authorizing the deletion of Wayne Stenehjem's account, and I guess I don't know what to make of that. That's what he says.
I think, actually, to be fair, I think I read that too. His account, he didn't. He just said that the comment I saw with the quote was that he didn't recall that conversation.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Is there any what motivated the deletion of his account?
I can't read another person's mind. I asked the person what possible authority, that's a direct quote, what possible authority they could have thought they had. I candidly, I do not feel like I have the authority to order the deletion of my deputy's email account. I just don't feel like I have that authority. I think it's an archive. I think that the work of the Attorney General doesn't mean that every email an email from my kid or something and I delete it. I don't mean that in the normal course of things, but things that I'm putting into files. I'm holding on to this, that, and the other. And then you get to the end of that's an archive. That's the way we view it. And I told this person, I literally do not believe I've got the authority to order the deletion of those files. And I'm the Attorney General. So I couldn't conceive of what authority, but I want to be clear about it. We've got a lot of eyes on the situation here in the office because I want to make sure that we're, seeing every angle, and everyone agrees there's no illegality because there was no open record at the time. It was a request. It wasn't being done to defeat an open records request of some kind. That's crystal clear. And it didn't violate. I wondered what policy did we inherit with regard to such deletions, and there was none, is none in the office. We're putting one together now. I've had my second meeting on that, and I said, in the meantime, we're just freeze it. Don't delete ours. I said, I think, eventually, whatever the policy looks like, it will contain the fact that you will always maintain the files of an attorney general and a deputy attorney general. Those will always be maintained. But so I want to make that clear, though. The person, and I also, in going through and talking to all the people involved and the person who did order this, I want to make clear also that I don't detect any purposeful evasion. Like it's like, identified something that's got to be scoured and get rid of it. I was
going to ask that, because obviously when you hear about something like this, and I don't want to, the internet is what it is, and people, social media, their mind runs wild with this fits into every conspiracy theory anybody's ever had about the Attorney General's office. But I mean, to me, this is a real problem in that nobody could say for sure what was in there, right? Is it something that's going to blow all our minds? I don't know. Nobody knows. Who can, unless by somebody can magic those emails back into existence. Nobody's ever going to know what was in there. And to me, I think that's the real problem with doing something like this is you've created a vacuum of information that nobody can ever go and verify now. And and it can be filled with a lot of foolishness that it's hard to dispute because it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that to me, that's the great disservice that's been done here.
Right. To be clear, and I know you're not saying anything otherwise, I didn't do any such thing.
Right.
Nor did my current deputy, nor did any attorneys in this office, nor did any supervisors in this office do anything like that, because it would never be the impulse and was not the impulse here. It was a non-supervisor, non-attorney, personnel, member of our staff who was not acting with any authority. Except for when Wayne's account, this person said in the email directing that be done, was saying it was approved by the deputy. The deputy at the time, Troy Seibel, doesn't say he didn't. He just, from the account I saw in the news, he said that he doesn't remember the conversation. Could be.
Is the person who ordered this, are they still working in the office today?
That's an internal personnel matter for right now, and I'll talk about that. But we're dealing with this in the seriousness that we take it, but also there's some other circumstances involved. I'll talk about that at some point, but not right now. I'm going to get you that email here. It's going to be pretty quick. So the only delay on it all is we're trying to make sure that we have everything that is currently responsive. And I will tell you, and there were only 3 of you that asked for these records. We want to make everybody to know that we'll continue that, and we'll view that. We are viewing that as an ongoing request. So if there's anything else that comes into our hands that is seen as responsive at all, I think we've shown that we're going to provide that, and we are. We made clear to our IT people also that we don't want to spare any expense. I said anything, if we need outside experts, anything that we can do to regenerate these, if we can find them in some way. We did find some small, relatively number of emails were cached on I'll call it the deputy laptop, and we're able to resurrect some of those, and haven't found anything in there that's responsive to this request, or I should point to this point of particular concern either. It looks like some sort of a smoking gun, like, oh gosh, this is why I was deleted. So I do want the public to feel assured about that, but at the same time, it raises an issue that I think this office will have had some experience here on this to be able to maybe inform other offices. And so I told my staff this morning, talking with them, I said, I really want whatever we come up with what the policy will be, the explicit policy. I want it to be, the kind of thing when people hear about it, they have confidence in this office and other offices if they choose to adopt something like this. It's pretty basic. It's not meant to be onerous. It's not meant to cost the taxpayers a bunch of money storing data that's unnecessarily being stored. But when you have information in the hands of an office holder or their primary deputy, or whatever you want to call them, there's a significant amount of that really is a public possession, I guess, is what I would say.
It's no different than
it would have been valuable. It would have been valuable for the years ahead for me to be able to go and say, gosh, I wonder what happened on that 7 years ago. Let me see if Wayne had anything in his emails. That would have been valuable. Not just to me personally, probably to the office.
Well, eventually to historians too. I mean, if you think about like how many leaders, their papers are maintained, and hey, that was expensive too, keeping all that paper on file somewhere. So the idea that we should keep these emails around, I think is pretty clear. One thing, I think I'm a fan of North Dakota's open records laws. I use them all the time. One weakness though is this retention issue. And am I right? I cannot find anywhere in statute where the legislature has written down any sort of guidelines saying you have to keep emails, or you have to keep letters, or you have to keep memos, or whatever it is. Any sort of guidelines for these records, and say you have to keep them for a set number of years. Now, I was talking to some like local elected officials, and like I was talking to a member of the city council, and he was saying like, well, our policy is we have to keep them for 7 years or something like that. He goes, I thought that came from the state. And I said, well, it's not in statute. It just kind of seems like maybe a particular department or an office has a policy, but there's nothing in the law. Am I right about that? I can't find it.
As far as what we've discovered in the wake of this, I think that you're articulating it right. I am literally baffled that that's the case. I would never have imagined that was the case. I think we all doing the opposite, that you leave government service and the emails are preserved forever. I don't know what to tell you. That hasn't been the case, but from the moment I learned of this in this office, the emails, the archived emails were like, we're preserving their work. We're going through and doing that. For the deputy and the attorney general, I mean, at some point, we leave these offices. We either leave after an election, or we retire, or something terrible happens, as happened with Wayne, and it was unexpected. And at that point, that's an archive. And it doesn't mean you have to have an unworkable policy to where you have to keep 80,000 emails and the state has to pay to, most of the email is just like, I'm CC'd on a ton of stuff, and people send stuff, or it's just real quick, like, hey, Drew, did you approve that leave requirement? A lot of it's not fine, but there's a lot of it that comes into that it pertains to litigation. And we put every office I've ever worked in, you have litigation holds. I imagine I'll had those already in this office. I've only been here 5 months, where they say such and such entity is suing the state of North Dakota, and Drew, you're being sued in your capacity as a land board member or industrial commissioner or something. So we're putting a litigation hold. Don't delete. You cannot delete any emails, even the innocuous ones. You can't delete anything pertaining to this.
Well, was that? Maybe you already answered this question and I didn't understand it, but was that any sort of review done with Wayne Stenehjem or Troy Seibel's accounts before they were deleted? I mean, if they were involved in active litigation or something like that, did we get rid of something that might have been relevant to a court somewhere?
I'm not aware of anything like that happening, but as I told you, the timeline was very rapid. When they deleted Wayne's was within 48 hours. Although in Troy's instance, I was told by this person that they had gone through and spent a couple of weeks going through, making an assessment of things, and this person was, well aware of the litigation holds and everything else. And I just haven't found anything that makes me question that. It just the judgment that was exercised obviously was something that I can't and won't defend.
That this is happening in your office is particular, and obviously this not to say that you had anything to do with it, but that this is happening in the Attorney General's office is particularly disturbing, given the office's role in open records law, right? You issue opinions all the time. You're the enforcer, such as it is, of open records law.
Right. Right.
Do you think, will you go, is it your plan, and obviously I know you're developing your own office's policy, is it your plan to push the legislature to review this and to create a guide? And obviously, we have so many different departments and a lot of records are different. Do we need to hold on to maps forever, or big bulky? I don't know. There's a lot of things that could be considered a record that's going to vary from department to department. But it seems to me like the legislature could sit down and come up with some guidelines that are pretty universal for retention of vitally important stuff like emails, letters, memos, stuff like that.
Yep. I think that's right.
Are you going to plan on engaging the legislature on that front?
Oh, I can pledge right now my complete supportive process where they, in the legislative body, is the perfect entity to make this assessment, because you just listed a host of considerations. Someone else might think of 20 or 30 others. And that's what the legislature does well. It's hearings, all the stakeholders can come in. We have, on one side, we have the cost, on the other side, we have the benefit. And then we go through all of that and they make that assessment. And we'll do what we've done from the moment I got here. We'll be completely transparent about, how can we help? Here was our experience. Here's what happened, because there's a dearth. There was no policy to the contrary. And just because no laws were broken by this person, and just because no internal policy was violated by this person, does not mean that this situation that we have brought to light as a result of our compliance with an open record request, that shouldn't guide what happens next. So answer your question with this office, will be fully engaged on that. And I told the people this morning, I want whatever policy we're putting together here, for the first time, there'll be a policy on this internally. We want it to be the kind of policy that can lead on this. That can be an example that people look at. So we're going to be vetting it well here. We're going to let people take a look at it. We'll get input. We'd have some people in the media too, or others who are making these kinds of requests. How might this be informed? That's the kind of open process we're going to have about it, because I think it's a matter of public recognizing that they can trust not just the Attorney General's office, but trust their government, that we are maintaining things that are of public interest. And not everything is. I get it. Like a lot of things where I'm just CC'd on something.
Or your email gets added to some spam list, right? We don't need to preserve spam forever.
And I'm kind of notorious. I tell people I much prefer them. I said, if you want me to read your email, send me a text that you just emailed me something that is time sensitive, because I'm not the Attorney General for email. I'm not sitting down here, managing that every day. I'm meeting with people all day long. I'm on the phone and I get calls. I engage people that way much better. But email it's an important workplace too. A lot also. I get whole litigation files can be sent up on some matter, and there's no fear of that wrongly getting out into the public purview. Ongoing litigation isn't subject to open records. It's not like people are going to see criminal investigation materials.
We already have, except protecting that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't have any fear of that. So I think we have every reason to embrace it, and we are, embrace that going forward. And we want to lead in this building on what will be the evolving policies. I get that sense. You hear from some people in the wake of something like this, and one person, sent me an impassioned plea to not discuss or not allow the publication of the person's name. Well, I said a couple things. One, we pointed out that it wasn't illegal. It didn't violate a policy. I don't think it wasn't the right call, but this person isn't being vilified for this. But I said I have no lawful ability to not comply with an open records request, just like anyone else. And I'm going to comply with every open records request. And that record is going out this morning or today, as soon as we can get it out with the other stuff. Again, this person is a valued person and professional. And
you're talking about the person who authorized the account.
They are those things. They're a public servant. They care deeply. I'm not just saying that to be nice about that person, but the chips sort of fall where the chips fall.
I deal with that, as journalists sometimes, I joke that when I'm having a really good day at the office, someone else is having an awful day, right? And that's a tough thing to deal with sometimes. It's hard, but the job is to hold people accountable. And when you make mistakes in government, listen, lots of people who work in government, whether elected officials or not, have made mistakes and been held accountable. And that's just the way government works. It has to be done. The public's business has to be done in public. And that's just the way it
we
works.
Really want to live by that virtue. And we talked publicly. Here's what we're doing and why. And I made clear to people, I want to always be accessible. I don't know how I can be more accessible. Most every reporter in the state probably has my personal cell phone. I can be reached very easily. I routinely will agree to sit down or either just answer some questions or go whatever, because we got to be transparent about what we're doing. What's our decision-making process? What are the records that pertain to that? And then at the end of the day, you stand accountable. And there are many decisions that we make here that are 100%ers. And you have to accept that. You have to take the criticism of what you're doing and be able to explain why you're doing what you're doing. It's not much more complicated than that. Not for me, it's not. And there are championship belt days, and then there are days that you're talking about something that maybe people don't like that the office made that decision, or that we pushed that policy, or do whatever. But they're still entitled to know.
And just to be clear, because we were talking about current open records law, and while there's no retention policy from the legislature, it is illegal to delete something or to get rid of a record that somebody has requested. So it is illegal. Like, that's not a loophole that exists. It is illegal if Rob Port files and says, I want to see this memo or whatever, and they delete the memo or trash the memo or shred the memo and then say there's no responsive record. That's a crime currently under the law.
This example we're going to be releasing today, that it does identify the person again, and I don't want to highlight that too much, but it does that. If I just concluded that no, you know what, I don't see any news value, and I got to be honest with you, I personally don't see a news value in it, because they're not a supervisor, it's not a lawyer, but whatever, I understand it's not for me to determine. It's an open records request, so we're complying. But if I instead said, you know what, there's no news value in that, this is BS, everybody delete it, I'm shredding the hard copy that I've got, that thing's gone, we don't possess it, non-responsive, I just committed, I think, felony.
I think it's a Class C felony, if I remember right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Drew, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your candor talking about this, and looking forward, I guess, to getting the information from your office. Did you know Forum Communications Company has a robust podcast library? At inforum.com/podcasts, we have everything from politics, sports, true crime, outdoor adventure, and more. Visit inforum.com/podcasts and explore them all today.